going to church. Go to church. There was one time there was a lady at church found out what I did for a living. She was like, Brother Norman, the scriptures teach us that loud laughter is not approved. And I said, well, Sister Johnson, if you've ever seen me perform, you know that's not a problem.
Hey, you can just do stuff. Like, you don't need anybody's permission or anything. You just kind of come up with weird stuff you want to go do. You can just go do it. Okay. Go be weird.
I used to have a really cool Sunday school teacher, right? But he was a little confident. It was a little overconfident sometimes. Right? And one time he forgot his lesson, so he comes in and he's like, all right, boys, tell what we're going to do. You just go ahead and throw out any question you have about anything about life in general, anything you want about church, anything, and I'm going to give you a straightforward, honest answer right now. We're all just kind of like, yes, Brother Norman. Okay, is God not omnipotent? Well, yeah. Okay, is God omniscient? Yeah. Okay, well, if God is all powerful and He's all knowing, would He not know everything we're going to do before we do it? And then if He allows us to do it, even though He has the power to stop us from doing it, if He allows us to do it, would not then anything that we do then become God's will that's making free agency an illusion? Why don't we just go ahead and play hangman?
The easiest line to fall for is the one you want to believe. So be careful about that kind of thing. Okay. Have a super freaking awesome rest of your day and stuff.
And later on, I studied philosophy. I want to find more, I get more answers. So I went to college to study philosophy. So it was a little weird. It's the first day of class, right? Teacher comes walking in and goes, perhaps the most important thing that you can learn in this class is that there are no absolute truths in the universe. Back there, like, yes. Yeah. Hey. Well, okay. If there are no absolute truths, and then you make the statement that there are no absolute truths, won't the statement that there are no absolute truths be an absolute truth? Thus negating the idea that there are no absolute truths? Perhaps we should just play hangman.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the start of season 4 of the Dear Christians podcast. This is Dan with you, and I am so grateful to you for taking the time to listen, to watch, and especially those of you who have been liking videos, liking episodes that you've been listening to on Spotify and Apple and Google Podcasts, as well as sharing and subscribing. If you haven't done that yet and you're enjoying the content, you're enjoying the conversations, please, I know everyone says it, but we say it because some people, they just forget. Take a minute to like, share, subscribe, hit that little notification bell if you're watching on YouTube. And more importantly than that, share these conversations with people that you think would be they'd be beneficial for. These conversations are always meant to be the start of a discussion and a tool for you to be able to utilize them ultimately to engage in honest conversations around Christianity and culture with people in your own life. So thank you to all of you who have been doing that already and being a part of this ministry. It would not exist without you. So thank you so much to all of you, especially to those of you who have been supporting us on Patreon. Shout out to Eddie, especially, who's been a huge supporter. He has come on the show in the past. The Dear Christians podcast is a huge fan of the Brute Facts podcast. So again, shout out to Eddie and everything he's doing over there. This episode, I am so blessed and so grateful. I wanted to start off this season with a positive, happy, and encouraging note. We deal with a lot of heavy topics here at the Dear Christians podcast, if you haven't noticed already. And one of the things I felt was really important was to bring in a guest that could lighten up the mood a little bit and is really, really talented and gifted and smart and good at bringing honest, relatable, authentic truth to a conversation that normalizes the world that we live in and just conveys a sense of hope and encouragement in a way that is really fun and funny. And I couldn't think of anybody better to do that than the comedian / philosopher Rodney Norman. Now, if you are not familiar with Rodney, I want to play a few clips here of some of his humor and some of his comedy. He's got a few different bits that he does. He does stand-up comedy. He also has a character that he does for his YouTube channel and on TikTok and other social media platforms, and just giving you a little bit of a taste of the kind of humor and sense of positivity and encouragement that is extremely relatable, and I think more of us would benefit from having in our lives. So here's Rodney doing some of his best work.
Hello and welcome to today. I take this opportunity to say that if you're seeing this video, it means that you're still alive, and so you can still do stuff. So you should just take a minute and just go, okay. There's a lot of craziness going on in my life, but I can deal with it. 'Cause I'm still here. I got nothing else to do except deal with stuff, so I'm just gonna deal with it. Okay, so have a super awesome day. So the most important thing you gotta remember is, some people were, they were doing some stuff, and then other people were like, hey, don't do that stuff, and then other people were like, hey, yeah, they should do, that stuff. It's good that they're doing that stuff, and then the other people were like, I don't think they should be doing that stuff, and then the one they're doing, so things are like what I'm trying to say is that in conclusion, I have no idea.
So there you go. That's Rodney. That is his comedy. Just some of his comedy. He has stand-up as well, which for those of you that watched live probably got to listen to a good chunk of that and see some of that before we started the broadcast. But let me bring him in. I guess we can just jump into it. I'll just start off by saying thank you so much for coming on the program, Rodney. I really appreciate you being here.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Yeah. I as I mentioned in my introduction, my first introduction to you was the comedic bit where you're doing. It's a character, right? It's essentially a character that you're doing,
Right. Yes.
right?
Yes.
And it's the one where you're like, I have no idea. You know, the whole like I'm trying to explain what's happening. And it's extremely broad how you're breaking it down, but it is to a T, like every conflict. And I connected so well with the comedic humor of it, as well as just like the raw authenticity of like, I seriously have no idea what's happening right now. Like these people are all angry and they're all mad and nobody's getting along. And I have no idea why we can't just be civil. Like that was my first introduction to you. And the moment I saw that, I'm like, no, to be honest, I wasn't 100% sure it was a character. And this is how good of a job you did. Like I wasn't 100% sure on point it was a character or not, but whether it was or wasn't didn't matter. I'm like, I like this guy. Like this is so on point. I love it. And then I dived a little bit more into what you're doing and saw that you've got just so many awesome like TikTok and one-off short videos of trying to just push some kind of normalcy on how we're all like struggling to get a handle on life sometimes. And just being encouraging in that way and be like, it's okay. Right? It is totally okay. I loved that. And then I saw you were on Dry Bar Comedy and you're doing bits there and realized, no, this dude's like got a real philosophical mind with his comedy. I was like, that is awesome and unique. And I love that. And was just like, okay, I need to follow this guy. I need to let people know about what he's doing because this is really cool stuff. I loved it. I didn't even know if you were a Christian or not. I just like, this is awesome stuff. I love it. And then you're doing bits as Santa Claus and like all the links are going to be in the description. Follow Rodney, follow what he's doing. And if you want to book him for something, I'm sure he'd love to hear from you. But I wanted to reach out to you. I'm like, I don't know if he's going to say yes or not. He's a busy guy, but I'd love to bring you on and just talk about you and where this character came from and your background and how you got into comedy and like where all of this stuff is kind of going for you as a vision of what you're trying to do. I know you got a podcast coming out soon, which we're going to start. I guess it's going to start soon, but we'll talk about that. That's a really, really long rambling ADD introduction here of me. You haven't even said a word yet. I apologize.
This is an easy podcast. I'm just
the easiest show ever for you, right? No, but tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, what is your background? What is your faith, your belief? You know, all of that good stuff that I'm sure some people here are wondering about.
Oh, sure. Yes, I am a Christian. I've been lifelong. You know, I was raised Mormon.
Oh, okay.
Or as we like to call it, Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints.
Right.
Trying to get away from the Mormon idea, but anyway, or the Mormon name, I guess. But so I was interested in religion very early in my life, and I had a great grandmother. A grandmother who was great. She was awesome.
Okay,
and
that's a good distinction. That's a good clarification.
Yes.
Yeah,
and she just anytime I had questions about God and religion, the Bible. She always was just happy to answer, and not just give me the answers, but showed me how to find the answers. She showed me how
Yeah.
to get in the Bible and cross-reference things, and she had other books that you commentaries on the Bible, and so at a really young age, I just loved getting into it.
Yeah.
And from that, I think every Christian, when you really start studying theology, you also love philosophy because it's all very intertwined.
Yeah.
And so when just as a kid, I was just fascinated by this whole God thing and religion and what was the meaning of life and what are we doing here? What is this all about? And then I had that, my grandmother was always just really encouraging. And she was the first, she had a little library in her front room. It wasn't very big, it was just one bookshelf full of books. And I was more drawn to that than TV or games or anything. I just loved to
Okay.
pick up, all her books about religion and philosophy. And just, I just loved it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
loved everything about it. And as I got older, being a Mormon and getting to know Christians, we understand that Christians have a very different or as I say, other Christians have a different perspective about how Mormons see the world. And
Yeah. There's an interesting
there's a
history in
lot
that
of
dynamic and relationship for sure.
yeah, and
Yeah.
but what that did is it forced me to go and look at how other Christians look at the Bible and how
Yeah.
others view life and I was always encouraged, and that's one thing our church always encourages is to explore, to look, that we don't have all the answers. The answers, it's all out there. It's all out there. Go and look, go search, find it. And so I did. That was part of my childhood and my whole life was going out looking, saying, that we don't have all of it. The pieces are scattered all over. Let's go find them.
Yeah.
And so I've had that attitude my whole life. And then also I love to entertain people. My grandmother had this porch. Well, it was okay. So my grandparents were a big part of my life growing up. We always lived pretty close to them, and it was funny. My grandfather built the house that they lived in. It wasn't very big, but it was really funny because the city had this thing that you couldn't get. It was really hard to get a building permit in this city in Provo, Utah, but what they did was if you had an already existing foundation, you could build on it without any without any special permits. So he would just go and pour a cement slab and call it a porch because you could build that without any building permit. And then if you waited for a few years, then you could build anything you wanted on it. So this is how he was building the house, was he would build it.
Interesting. Okay.
Slab, and then he would build on it later. Well, anyway, he had ran out of time and he had this big concrete slab in the back of the house, which was this huge porch, and it became our stage for me and my brothers, sisters, and my cousins. This is where we would go and we would put on these plays and concerts for my grandparents and my uncles and the aunts and parents and anybody else would come and watch. And so it was there that I really just got into just entertaining.
Okay.
And I loved going to my grandmother's and grandparents' place because I could read and I could talk to her, and then also my grandfather, who is the inspiration for my character.
Is it really? Okay. I was
Because
wondering about that. I'm like, obviously, it's so spot on and familiar. Like the whole feel of that character is so well fleshed out. I was like, this has got to be based on something like that is personal or something that you're familiar with or something like so good. So that's exciting. That's awesome. That's really cool. So you've grew up religious in a very devout religious family. You want to be an entertainer, but I know after talking in preparation for the show, it came up that you've got like a formal degree in philosophy, right?
Oh
Like a
yes,
real
yeah. I have
formal background in that. Um, what made you pursue that as a career, as a education? What did you end up doing with that before you got into comedy? What were you doing? Like, what is it about philosophy specifically that made you pursue it in like such an official and formal manner? Because not many people dive in that deep into philosophy. When I went through college and my undergrad, I loved having those conversations and talking about ethics and rhetoric and critical thinking. I took all these courses, I absorbed them like crazy, and then realized that's going to be a really, really tough career path. So I decided to choose broadcasting instead. But I understand the draw. But what was it for you that made you go, no, I'm gonna really dive into this deep?
Well, it really goes back to that passion for knowledge and just having the inquisitive mind and always just wanting to flesh out ideas and things. And you have to forgive me, my cat's
Hey,
wants to be involved in whatever
wants
I
to be
got
on the show too.
going on.
Hey, that's we can have
So
guest characters and stuff show up. That is totally fine.
she keeps playing with my camera behind my
So
computer. Anyway, so just that natural, just that desire to search and grow, and as I was going to college to get my degree, I knew I was going to do stand up. I knew that I was going to be an actor, or comedian of some sort. It's all I really wanted to ever do. But instead of if you get an acting degree, it doesn't really help you in acting at all.
That's a very good point.
I mean, it doesn't really do anything for you.
If you really need to refine your skills in it, sure, go for it.
Yeah,
But,
you get some specific skills, and I took a lot of classes in acting and everything. But
a
but
degree in it. What are you going to do with that, though? Yeah, that's a good point.
But I thought, if I get a degree in philosophy and I have all these great ideas, because I was also, I was pursuing stand up, and I thought I'll get more out of philosophy for comedy than I will pursuing my acting degree. So, because you're exploring these new ideas, and that's the thing I love about philosophy, is being able to go and entertain an idea that you totally is foreign to you, or something you completely disagree with, but being able to really absorb it and really try to get into it and understand it.
Yeah,
so you could pick it apart and find what's wrong with it, or what's right with it, or what's good.
Yeah.
And I love that. I did debate in high school, and I went to
I was part of that crew too. Yep.
Yeah. I went to college on a full ride debate scholarship.
Okay.
So so just wanting to have that base of knowledge to work with, and really for comedy fodder. I mean, it was I got a degree for the comedy, for the jokes. Really.
That's fun. Yeah, that's awesome.
And the thing I loved about getting into philosophy, getting into logic and all that kind of stuff, is that it really is so close to exactly what comedy is.
Right.
A syllogism in logic is really the perfect form for setting up a joke.
Definitely.
Most humor is just bad logic.
Right. That's a great insight. That is such a good insight. Most comedy is really just pointing out flawed and bad logic. I love that. It's so true. That is so true.
And when I'm sitting there, I'm studying all this, and I'm just like, other people in my classes, they're just like, well, kind of confused, like, I don't get this. They're all just or bored or just trying to get through the class I'm sitting there getting excited. I'm like, yes, this is perfect. Especially you start getting into like logical fallacies.
Yeah,
that's like a joke writing class. You just start understanding logical fallacies. I was like, dude, holy cow, I'm not getting a degree in philosophy. I'm literally getting a degree in stand-up comedy, because that's exactly
awesome.
what this is.
That's
And
great.
when you know I start making those connections, I was just like, oh yes,
Yeah.
I love this.
That's hilarious, man.
And you know, and most people who go into philosophy, you either most people get a philosophy degree, they'll go on to do law, either become a lawyer or they go on to become a teacher or professor in philosophy,
Right.
which I would love to do. I'd love to teach. I'd love to get up and teach a philosophy class, but there's not a lot of freedom in that.
Yeah.
You know, there's not a lot of you're very limited what you're going to do with a philosophy degree in that
Yeah.
regard. You know, pursuing academia, I mean, you're just pretty limited.
Yeah.
So I saw it. I was like, hey, I could teach philosophy with comedy. You know, just kind of intertwine them. And so I started working on it, and the first few generations of it, not all that well received.
Really?
But a lot of it was just you know how you're presenting it, and how you know how you should. Because I'm trying, I want to talk about philosophy, but I didn't want to come across as being pretentious or you know, kind of preachy. You know, I don't want to become condescending to the audience.
Yep. And that, to be honest, is something that a lot of people who dive into philosophy are like, they get super guilty of coming across that way.
Oh yeah,
you can come off as being so pretentious.
yes. Oh well, I've read Kant. Well, it doesn't.
Okay.
You know, but
Right.
that's
Right.
the attitude.
Yeah.
Like, well, I have a degree. Well, if
Yeah,
you study logic, you would know that doesn't matter.
Right. There you go.
It's like,
there's a joke and there's the truth right there along with it. That's great.
Authority. Way to go. Way to prove your degree was a failure. So I just saw this great opportunity, though, if I could just kind of work it out. And that's where the character has really kind of opened everything up, because, you know, he was based on my grandfather, who was an alcoholic. He was drunk most of the time when I would go or visit. So I had, my grandmother was a church going, very dedicated individual, and my grandfather was an alcoholic womanizer. I mean, he was a complete opposite. I don't know how these two got together. That's what I would go and see. You know,
grace of God is what happened, right? That's
God,
how they got together.
Jesus, and the New Testament, and baptism, and all this kind of stuff. My grandfather's, you know, telling me dirty jokes. And so that was what I had, you know, when I would go and visit my grandparents. You know, this was the kind of stimulation that I had going on, you know. And but so he would get drunk most of the time, and then he would try to tell me and my cousin stories from his life, or he'd teach us lessons and stuff. And he would just kind of have this, you know, it's just, so I was, all right, sit down. Let me tell you about this one time when I was okay, so I was railroad engineer. So, you know, so he would just start telling these weird stories.
Yeah.
And so as I got older, you know, he passed away when I was young. I was about 12 when he died. And it was tough. It was tough to deal with, because I loved this guy, even though with all his faults and, you know, misgivings in his life, I still, you know, cared about him and loved him. And so as I started thinking about different, because you're, as a comedian, as an actor, you're always thinking about characters and things. And I started having this idea, and I was doing a show one night where we had just driven from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho down to Boise during a snowstorm. So we had to get up real early from the show that we did in Coeur d'Alene the night before, then drive down to Boise in the snowstorm to make our show for the next night. So we're driving all day, and it's just, you know, kind of, you know, it's a little anxiety ridden sort of thing, because, you know, at any moment, you know, you could just spin out and crash. And so we're taking it pretty easy, but we're driving all day. So we get there to the show with just minutes before the show started. And here I'm just tired. I've been up all day. been, kind of on edge with the driving situation with the snow, and I'm just really not into doing the show, you know.
You have those days. I mean, that's true. Yeah,
You're,
for sure.
but hey, you're professional.
Yep.
You got a job to do. Get up there and do
Yep.
it. So here I'm looking at doing a half-hour material, and I am just dead tired. And that's when I thought, you know what? I'm going to do this entire set as my drunk grandfather. And so that's where I started doing it, and it went really well. I was just
Okay.
like, just delivered my regular jokes, but as my drunk grandfather.
Okay.
And it was a lot of fun, and I would kind of go back and forth with it over the years and not really do a whole lot with it. But, I would just kind of be this character every once in a while. And then many years later, I was watching a friend of mine on Instagram because he wanted to be one of these influencers, right? Which they tell me I'm one of these people now. But anyway,
you're an influencer now. All
I'm
right.
an influencer.
Well, if you can influence more people my way too, that would be wonderful. I mean, we can influence people for each other, I guess.
Yes. As they say, audience share.
Yeah, there you go. That's the word for it.
And so I'm sitting there watching his Instagram post one morning, and he's doing these life coach kind of things. He's always being very encouraging and giving you pointers of how to make your life better. And he's doing this one. It was something like, he's leaning against the wall and in the hallway in his house, and he's saying, "Hey, do you feel like you don't deserve to be successful? Well, stop your self-doubt and stop your self-defeating beliefs, and I'm here to give you permission to be happy and successful because you deserve it."
Yeah.
And it kind of made me laugh because I thought, here he is. He's a wonderful human being. He's got a good heart, and he wants to help people, and nobody's paying attention to him. Nobody's listening because he's a good-looking dude. He's thin. He's tan. He's just he's got money. He's successful, and he's trying to share his wisdom with the world, and nobody's listening to him.
Right.
And it just kind of struck me funny because we see these guys, we see them all out there. All these influencers their life is perfect, and everything is perfect, and everything's great, and everything's awesome, and they're here to show you the way. And it was at that moment that I started laughing, and I thought, that's it. My drunk grandfather as the world's worst motivational speaker. The absolute worst advice. He does everything's wrong. He doesn't, everything that you could.
Enjoy your stupid life. Hey, you.
Yeah.
Enjoy your stupid life. Yeah.
But because I started getting into the whole, how to become. I started looking into these guys. I was watching all the motivational stuff.
Were you? You're like just absorbing that.
Yes, and they're all basically
the
same thing. They're all saying the same things, and they're just it's the same stuff that you've been hearing. You can go back to Dale Carnegie, how to win friends and influence.
How to win friends and influence people. Yep.
That's all. Or Think and Grow Rich.
Right.
It's all just versions of the same stuff that we've heard for years. Right?
Yeah.
And that's when I started doing it, I was just like, I'm going to be the anti personality.
You're hearing the same stuff from someone that you're not expecting to hear it from.
Yes. So I was like, everything's wrong. I'm not, I'm standing up instead of standing in front of a Ferrari in a mansion. I'm just some dude standing out in the woods. The hair's crazy. The video's wrong because there's cars going by and you can hear them, and it's, coughing halfway through.
Right.
I don't say it perfectly. I mean, there's just mistakes everywhere. I was like, that's it. That's what people need to see is that life isn't perfect.
Right. I was just going to say, Rodney, that's part of the real genius of what makes it so relatable and connectable, I think, for more people than the dude in front of his Ferrari, right? Like there's an aspect of I think authenticity that comes with someone who is clearly stumbling and struggling to get the right words out. But at the end of the day, the heart and the motivation and the genuine message being delivered is one of hope or empathy or optimism that does matter. And I feel like that, like there's a level of rawness and authenticity that makes it a lot easier to accept when it's coming from someone who you can connect with on some level and is a little bit more relatable, you know?
Well, it's
That's
so
why I
funny.
love it. I love it. Absolutely love
Yeah,
it.
that's one of my favorite things is people will constantly tell me, you remind me of my grandfather, you remind me of my uncle, you remind me of this guy at work, you
Right.
remind me of my dad, you remind me, there's somebody in almost everybody's life who's got somebody who's like this,
Definitely.
who seems like they're a simpleton, but in reality, they're very connected with themselves, and they just don't care about the rest of the world. They're just living their life and they're happy.
Yeah.
They're not perfect, and that's what makes them perfect. Is that they're
And
not
that's
perfect. They're not trying
right.
to be perfect. They're
Like
just living their life.
this idea that you can only enjoy your life by making it as free of stupid and frustrating crap as possible is such a pipe dream.
Oh, it
you
is.
know?
It is.
So the fact that I don't know, that's for me, that's the thing that really was encouraging and helpful for me when I saw it. And what made me think, okay, I don't know if this is a character or if this isn't. If it is a character, it's freaking genius. If it isn't a character, the authenticity of this, the message, there's something really, really special going on with the genuineness of the encouragement mixed with the rawness of the imperfection of the person that normalizes a lot of that for every person that's watching it. And I think that's something that the world needs to see more of, to be honest with you.
Yeah. No,
And to be able to laugh about it, to be able to laugh about it.
Yeah, I have had some haters who thought that I was like I was making fun of people who are neurodivergent
Really?
or something.
Oh,
And I'm like, no, look,
that's
if
not
you
it.
go
No.
and look at old things of Einstein, he was kind of absent-minded. He wasn't
Right.
a great orator by any.
Right.
There's a reason there aren't a lot of speeches by Einstein, because one,
Yeah.
half the people couldn't understand what he was saying.
Mhm.
By just the subject that he was talking about, and then just the way he was, he was sort of
Free flow of thought and
yeah.
communicate. Yeah, it's very
Yeah,
different.
a lot of these very intelligent people, they're just not. They just don't care. Things that we think are important don't matter to them. That's
Right.
why you wear the same clothes over and over again.
Right.
I've studied some of these guys who basically they just have one thing that they'll wear all the time, so that they don't have to waste any mental energy thinking about what to wear. It's just the same. They just wear the same,
Yeah.
that kind of mentality. And, but I've had people who have said that they've connected with that character so much, then when they find out that it's a character, they feel betrayed.
Oh, really? Oh, no, I could see that. I could see that.
Yeah.
I could see that. But it, at the heart of it, doesn't change the fact that there's still something very, very real and honest that is there that you're connecting with. And that's kind of the whole point, right?
Yeah,
That's the whole point.
Like I said, it's trying to convey that very honest sentiment, that very honest understanding that, look, you don't have to have a Ferrari and a mansion to be happy. You don't
Right.
need stuff to be happy.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, they're great. There's nothing wrong with being rich. There's nothing wrong with having an abundance. There's nothing wrong with it at all.
Right.
But if you think that getting it's going to make you happy, you're going to be sadly mistaken. That's why a lot of people, when they find success, I've been in entertainment for many years, and
Mhm.
I've gotten to meet a lot of people in every spectrum, from the biggest names in comedy to, just starting out open micers and everything in between, and I've seen many people who will obtain the highest levels. They'll get into the, making millions of dollars, and you meet them and they're miserable.
Yeah.
And yet I'll meet other people who hardly have anything, but they're getting to do comedy, and that's what makes them happy. That
Yeah.
they're just barely getting by, but they're still happy. You meet people who are homeless and they're happy because they're just, they have everything they need. They got a place to sleep. They get food most of the time, and and they're still happy. I mean,
Yeah.
I had a friend who was telling me he was a stockbroker in New York, and he right out of college he got a job on Wall Street. He was making a lot of money, just raking it in, and he was miserable, absolutely miserable. And he couldn't understand. He was like, he had everything he had ever wanted, in his life. He had it at a young age, and he was miserable. And he was on a lunch break one time, and he saw these homeless guys teasing each other and joking around on a street corner, and they were laughing and they were happy. And he goes, "How could you possibly be happy? You're homeless." He was like, this is just breaking his brain. He's like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
Because he's like, I have, he was telling me he was paying $1,000 a month. This is back in the earlier, what was it? It was in the 80s.
Wow.
He was paying like $1,000 a month just for a place to park his car. This is in the it was insane. He says, I'm spending all this, I have all this money, I have everything I could ever want, and I'm miserable. And he was like, I'm done. And he went and he sold everything he had. He put a bunch of stuff in storage, stuff they wanted to keep, but he let go his apartment, everything, and he lived homeless in New York City for 6 months just to see what the deal was.
Wow.
And he said he met some of the nicest. He says, "Oh, there's still a weird underbelly. I mean, it's New York, it's homeless people." But he said most of them are there because there's no cares. They're free. They're happy. They get up, do whatever they want. If they want to leave, they can just go. He goes, it was an eye-opening experience. He ended up starting a farm in New Jersey and just raised cattle when I met him. And it was just getting away from, he goes, all that stuff. He said, I had all of it. I had everything you could ever want. Everything you think about the Wall Street lifestyle, I had it. And I hated it. And he says, once I decided it didn't matter. He goes, I'll never go back. And meeting this guy was awesome to me. And being able to bring that message to people that stuff doesn't make you happy. Money doesn't make you happy. I mean, trust me, life is better with money than without it. And it certainly helps alleviate stress.
As far as like internal happiness and purpose and like just a lot of those like more non-tangible things that everybody really longs for that money can't buy, right? Like it's important to recognize I mean, obviously money's necessary, finances are necessary to be able to function in life and do certain aspects of life that, if you want to pursue and it's important to you. But yeah, to your point, to your credit, as far as like living a life with meaning and purpose and joy, money's not going to provide that, wealth isn't going to provide that.
If all you're focused on is that, if all your focus is on status and having things,
that's what makes you valuable, right? Yeah. So So, and that kind of brings me to maybe getting into a little bit more of the deeper side of this conversation a little bit. But here on this show, we dive into a lot of really deep conversations and important topics, whether they're social topics or political topics or trying to help people who are struggling with trauma issues or whatever. And I feel like there are more, again, this is the Dear Christians podcast, so it's targeted towards believers. I feel like there are a lot of believers out there that are really missing that dynamic of where that joy and that hope really does come from, that is beyond our circumstance or our situation, right?
Yes.
And I'm curious if in your experience and in your dealings with this character and kind of starting to put this message out there, like, have you seen a strong response from believers that are really connecting with this message, or is it more people who are possibly outside of the church or maybe kind of spiritual or religious but not directly? Like, who is it that's really connecting with this message, and is the church really a big part of helping push this forward, or is it not? I'm just curious, like, what?
Well, I've always been of the opinion that, the Spirit will always testify of truth wherever and whatever and to whomever it is spoken.
That's a very,
and so I may
very
not
astute.
be, going out and touting, hey, bring yourself to Jesus,
Yeah.
but my goal is to help people see the truth in how to live your life and how to find happiness and how to find joy. And I think when you get people going in that direction, when they know that they can find joy and that there is a purpose and meaning to life, that naturally when you are on that path, you're going to find God. God will show up when you're ready for him. When God is ready to manifest himself into your life, when you're ready for it, he'll be there. Christ is there. He's waiting for you to be ready to bring him into your life. And so I really see it as my mission is to get people going in that direction, because I think there's a lot of people who are just who I think to some degree have possibly been raised in Christianity to some degree, but not really into it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep.
A lot of people are atheists. There's a lot of people who are into this whole deconstruction, and they're finding this new spirituality, new age stuff. So there's a lot of people who are seeking. They're looking for the answers, and they don't know where to go. And so they end up, starting to, search for Bigfoot and UFOs and think that that's going to be the answer. And it's like, okay, look, being interested and inquisitive, that's great. But if you can start directing yourself in the right direction, you're going to find yourself happier. And that really is, I feel like it's, a lot of people tell me that they feel like what I'm doing is a calling or a ministry, and it really feels that way. So it's like, I'm speaking the truth, because everything I talk about is rooted in the scriptures. All these ideas you can find them in Proverbs and Psalms and the New Testament. You can find them in the teachings of Christ in the Sermon on the Mount. All of this stuff, and being able to take and educate people about philosophy, about morality, and how to live your life, and how not to be judgmental of others, how to really truly have a Christian heart and a Christian love for other people, without calling it that. Because the thing that bothers me is when Christ is treated like he's just a bumper sticker or a T-shirt slogan. That I'm not
like a self-help kind of thing, or like
they reduce Jesus Christ to nothing but a soundbite, a bumper sticker, a slogan. And it's like, this is, he's more than that. And so it's sort of I feel like a primer to the truth.
I can see that
convey, and so I don't want to get preachy. I want to really just give people advice that they can use, and when they incorporate in their life and they start going that path, hopefully that opens them up to something better down the road. And
that's good.
That's how I see it.
Do you find that there are many many Christians that are coming across your content that are like overly critical of it in any way? Like, are there some people that are like, well, you need to be preaching the gospel, or you need to be, or whatever, or
I have
or how could you embrace comedy like this? You should be, evangelize, or whatever.
Yes, all of that. I've
Yeah.
well, one thing I find, especially as a comedian, I'm not vulgar or I mean, I have some jokes. As I like to say, I'm not dirty, but sometimes I get naughty with my comedy. And I'm just being,
That's a clever way to put that. I like that. Yeah.
I'm a comedian. I'm entertaining people in a bar, for crying out loud. Calm down a little
Right.
bit.
Right.
But one thing I find is that when other Christians realize that you are a believing Christian, they'll hold you to a whole different standard
Hmm.
than what they will a non-believer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So,
Oh yeah.
And so they'll get very critical and very judgmental about your decisions, about jokes and what you talk about or not talk about. It's like, oh, you should be using your comedy to preach Christ. I'm like, no, I don't want to cast pearls before swine. I don't think,
Right.
in a comedy club is where I'm going to, start.
If the goal is to be able to build relationships with people, for them to be able to know and see and experience the grace of God personally,
Yeah.
then getting in their face and preaching at them, that's going to be a really, really short experience, and you're not going to be welcome back. Like,
Yeah.
how is
Yeah.
that,
And
how
I
is that
just,
helping anybody, let alone the mission of the church? How is that helping really anybody?
yeah.
So,
Well, I've always been of the opinion that you teach the truth and let the Spirit do the preaching.
yeah, that's good. That's good. I
And
like that.
that's,
Yeah.
so that's what I do. I just show people that there is a morality, that there is a way to live life that is honest and pure. And when you do so, you have an amazing experience.
Yeah.
You go through. It doesn't mean that you're not going to have hardships. I mean, I think one of the problems I have with a lot of what's happening in Christianity is this attitude is that, okay, whatever you ask for, God's going to give it to you in faith. And if you don't get it, well, it's because you don't have enough faith.
Right. That was the whole community that I lived in and grew up in, and it did a number on me. That is for sure.
Yeah, because then, so you're thinking, okay, well, I'm going to church every Sunday. I'm reading my scriptures every day. I'm praying every day, and everything's horrible. I still don't have enough to pay my bills. I don't, so you start thinking, okay, it's because I'm bad. I don't have enough faith, and that's why I'm failing. And it's like,
and not to mention you start, or the other side of that coin too, is that then people start looking at, if you were brought up to believe that your relationship with God is not unlike your relationship with some miracle, like tool or something that was being slung at you at a late night infomercial, on QVC or something, and then you get it, right, and then you get it, it shows up, and it's not working exactly as advertised, and you feel ripped off, and you get upset. Like if someone is brought up to believe that your relationship with God and your relationship with the Holy Spirit and understanding of Jesus is like this amazing dish soap that's going to change your life, then you're going to feel really, really ripped off and upset, and have a lot of, I mean, you mentioned deconstruction. Like, there you go. People are going to be like, well, this is not what I believe. Like, this is not what I was taught, and the community I was in is not actually reflective of the world that I am existing in right now. So what do you do with that, except start really deconstructing what you were taught, and
which can be a good thing.
That's exactly right. And that's where, like, the term deconstruction is this huge buzzword, and I'm planning on having another guest at some point in the this season come on. We're going to dive into that a little bit deeper, but
and I would like to, as a philosopher, if I could call myself that.
I would call you one, so I'll call you that. Yes.
Deconstruction is a good thing, because really what you're doing is you're taking you're getting rid of all this, the garbage.
Yeah.
You're cleaning it off and getting
Right.
down to the real base. You're getting down to the foundation of what really the belief is.
And that's something,
that's a beautiful thing.
It's a great thing. And as long as it doesn't just stay this tattered destroyed mess, but you are looking at, and at the end of it, left with a rebuilt core of what is real and what is true. That's a great thing. And I think more and more, as I'm looking at and understanding church history and different aspects of, really, yeah, I mean, church history, this is nothing new. Like, there are seasons where major chunks of believers go through massive seasons of deconstruction because so much of what the church leadership or the church model or, theological or philosophical relationships with, government or culture. And again, this whole podcast is about Christianity and culture. Sometimes those relationships can become more influential in what the church is actually doing than what they should be, and then starts to become really very unbiblical. And the church
Absolutely.
starts to become,
When you start worshiping the church instead of God,
right.
that's where you start
And
making.
when you start seeing influence of, politics and government and culture seeping into and normalizing the way that the church is doing things, to the extent that to do it this way in culture is the Christian way, right? You start adding and compiling all this stuff. I mean, I think of like Martin Luther, for example, throughout church history, and he started essentially deconstructing the relationship that Catholicism and the church was having with government and with the culture around him.
Well, I mean,
And
his whole thesis was saying, "Hey, look, none of this was supposed to be going on."
right, exactly. Yeah. Like, this practice on the whole is not a terrible thing. And in fact, I'd say there's a really, really strong case to be made that this is there is a strong history of the Holy Spirit guiding the church through seasons of doing this when the church allows too much outside influence to come in and dictate and start, what's the word? Like, elevating cultural or political norms as being the same as, scripture or whatever. And
instead of worshiping the God as God is, we start trying to turn God, instead of us being created in God's image, we start creating God in our image.
Right. When that starts to happen,
creating a religion of a God that fits what we want, right, rather than what God is.
Exactly. And when that starts happening, I'm sorry, but yeah, the church needs to start deconstructing and getting down to the fundamentals and the core of what scripture actually says, who God actually is, who we are supposed to be as ambassadors of heaven, and really get to the fundamentals of it and recognize the things that we've allowed to come in and influence who we are, and ultimately things that like seriously cause division. That's the thing that I think we've tried to shed light on in some ways here on this show, is like, okay, you can have really, really strong political beliefs and convictions. You can have really, really strong, even theological beliefs and convictions in some degree that are different from one another. But let's not elevate a lot of these things to the point of ruling out everybody from actually being a follower of Jesus because they don't agree with your politics or something like that. At the core of it, it's like, okay, a committed follower of Jesus is who a Christian is. If you're committed to Jesus as Lord of your life, and you are recognizing that you as an imperfect person are worth dying for because Jesus demonstrated that, absolutely, and you're willing to say yes to following your life and committing it to him, like, that's a Christian. Is there anything in there that's a qualifier that goes, well, who did you vote for? No, absolutely not. Right. So this is where I think the deconstruction conversation, I didn't anticipate that coming up at all in this interview, but that's, for me, it is something that's been on the back of my brain a lot, because I see a lot of, prominent pastors and really, really really conservative evangelical pastors getting really upset and almost like waging war against the word deconstruction. as if they're like afraid of it, or they're saying, well, you're just an apostate, or you're, a heretic if you even remotely deconstruct. And in my mind, I'm like, well, I think what most people are deconstructing is the structural normalcy and the power structure essentially that has been used in a lot of church pastors like them. And it's making them really, really question their relationship with the Lord, which is where the church is really, really important for us to be there for them and with them and guide that to some degree and normalize it, which is, again, going back to what I love about your ministry, essentially, is like you're normalizing the fact that this stuff can be complicated. It can be difficult. You may not always have it figured out. And that is okay. There is still hope, even if it's messy. And I love that. I absolutely love that. Yes. So, which is why I wanted to have you on, and I want everyone to check out your website and go watch your stuff and like get behind what you're doing, because more believers need to have that level of like just authenticity and genuineness paired with hope,
Oh, yes.
So, sorry, I got on my soapbox there a little bit, Rodney. I kind of took the mic over for a second.
Yeah,
apologize.
I'm here preaching to the choir, brother.
There we go.
I hear you. I love it. Love everything you said. Love everything you got going on there.
With that said, and I again, usually we try to have these conversations go about an hour or so, and we're kind of getting near that now. I do want to give people a chance to hear about where they can find you, where they can find your stuff. If you have any new stuff or new projects or new ventures, I guess, that you're going to be working on or have coming up that they can be aware of, where can they find you? Where can they stay in touch with what you're doing? And do you have anything new or exciting coming up that people can keep an eye out for?
Yeah, I've got, rodneynorman.com. That's where all my stuff is. And of course, social media. You Google Rodney Norman, I'm the most famous Rodney Norman there is.
There you go. That's awesome.
But I'm kind of winning. So there I'm on all the social media stuff, and I'm currently working on writing a book.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's awesome.
The working title so far is How to Be Happy When Everything is Horrible.
I like that. I like that.
Also working on a couple. I've got several people who've been wanting to do everything from a web series to movies. So I'm just currently kind of in a writing mode. I've been working on a couple scripts, working on books, and forgiving my cat again.
It's all good. It's all good.
So I've got a lot going on. Just writing, and just I'm always doing stand up. So I'm out there milling about somewhere in the country doing stand up somewhere. So
is there any section of the country you have not been able to do your stand up in? Or I'm assuming East Coast, West Coast, North, South, Midwest. You've probably hit all of them, but is there anywhere that you're like, I haven't been here and I'd really like to go here sometime?
No, I've pretty much covered the whole country.
That's cool.
Getting more and more specific, just more and more places. So yeah, I've pretty much performed in every state in the union.
Cool.
But most of these are small places, and
yeah,
most of it was when nobody knew who I was. So now I never planned on being famous. I just thought, you know what? I'm just gonna tell jokes, and I'm happy with it, and just be a silly goofball, and that's all I really cared about. And then COVID hit, and then I had nothing to do but make videos, and then they just took off, and there
you go.
Just been having fun with it. So
that's awesome.
Grateful for everything that I've experienced, and just loving every day.
Yeah, I know. On one of the live streams that you did, it was like a week ago, maybe a couple of weeks ago. I know you'd mentioned something about how you might be working on a podcast coming out or something like that. And
Yes.
the idea was really neat. And I think we need to see more people taking this kind of an approach. To if you want to maybe talk a little bit about the idea behind it, I think a lot of people in my audience, at least, would appreciate it. My content is not nearly like a regular every week kind of a thing. Once a month, maybe 2 months. So I'd love to be able to give them other opportunities to connect with other people more frequently. But your show idea, your podcast idea, is essentially taking a philosophical but a comedic look at like that week. Or is that right? Or am I not quite?
Yeah, yes,
explaining it
absolutely.
right?
It's a way to bring philosophy into how to evaluate what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
How to approach things, how to judge things, how to or righteously judge things.
Yeah.
And how to take what we're experiencing and make it work for you, because that's what really, philosophy is being able to just really analyze yourself, your life, and what's going on, and knowing what it is that you can control and what you do have power over,
Yeah.
and being able to accept those things that you don't have any power over, and being able to tell the difference. And that's the idea of the podcast.
Okay.
Just teaching philosophy, but using what's going on in the world to do so.
That's cool. That's very cool. I know a number of my audience is real big into philosophy and that sort of stuff too. So that's why I particularly wanted to highlight that specific content of yours, which isn't out yet, but it's coming out at some point soon, right? I don't know if I
my problem is being the philosopher in me, I overanalyze everything, and so when
I understand that. Yeah,
it's like, okay, is this exactly what I want to say? No, I don't know.
Right.
I gotta find different ways. So it's I've got to learn to take my own advice and just do it.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Just
go out and enjoy your stupid life, right, Rodney? Like,
yes.
Yeah. Is it going to be just you? Or are you going to be having guests on? Are you going to be bouncing it back and forth with another person at all? Or
I think the first few episodes is just going to be me, and then but I am going to be inviting people on. I was doing a podcast series where I was just interviewing just whoever, and we would talk about their life and then talk about their philosophy, and then I would kind of help them explain, or I would basically break down how they saw the world and show them what their philosophy was, even though they didn't know how to explain it or what it was.
Okay.
Like every idea that you've ever had, somebody else has always thought of it, and a philosopher has said it.
Yeah.
And so I listen to their personal philosophy, how they live their life, and then I say, oh, by the way, you should read David Hume because he's very much the same ideas you have, or Spinoza or whoever. And so I'll probably
more insight into who they are, and that's cool. Okay.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Very cool. So, but do you have a name for the show when it starts coming out? I'm assuming.
Right now it's just the Rodney Norman Show.
Okay. Hey, if you're the most famous Rodney Norman on the internet right now, I don't see why you wouldn't. Why wouldn't you depart from what's working, right? That's great, man. And if they want to keep in touch with you and get more updates on that and other stuff coming up, your website, obviously, you've got a do you have like a email newsletter and that sort of thing that goes out too?
Absolutely.
Yeah, all that stuff's on the website.
And through there, you can get merch.
Okay,
show up.
That's a good point. Okay, so no joke, Rodney's merch is amazing. It's absolutely hilarious. I love it. It's so simple, and it's all centered around your character too, which is so. If you like the character that he's doing and you're connecting with it, the merch is fantastic. I haven't gotten a T-shirt yet, but I have been tempted more than a few times, and I'm sure I probably will here soon because they're so clever and so simple, and they're great conversation starters too. If that's your thing. So
yes.
All right. So with that said, we'll wrap it up here. Every show with every guest that I have come on, I always like to give you a chance to essentially end the conversation by finishing the sentence, "Dear Christians." I mean, it's the Dear Christians podcast, and the goal is that this is really about trying to give insight and conversations that elevate our discussions about Christianity and culture, and we're trying to talk about it with Christians. So in this conversation here, it could be just you personally, what would you say, or it could be about kind of the conversation at large that we've had. It doesn't have to be, but how would you finish that sentence if you were to like write a letter or something to all believers, or a text message maybe, or whatever you want to call it now? A tweet, right? Although who knows how much longer that's going to be around.
Yeah.
What would you say? Dear Christians, what?
Dear Christians, God is real. And he wants you to be happy. He wants you to learn. He wants you to grow. He wants you to get out there and experience life. Don't be afraid to get out there. Don't be afraid of your faith. Embrace your faith. Love your faith. Pray to God and thank him every single day for everything that you have. Thank him for everything you don't have. And don't just seek to find answers to your prayers, but ask God to let you be the answers to other people's prayers. Give yourself over to be an instrument to God, and you will find your whole world will open up. Enjoy your stupid, beautiful life.
There it is. Yes. That was awesome, Rodney. I love that. That's great. Thanks again for coming on the show, man. I really appreciate getting to know you and talk with you. And welcome back anytime. If there's anything I can do to help, I'm in the Chicago area, so
awesome.
Let me know, man. I'd love to stay connected and have you back at some point if we can work it out. So
I would be delighted.
Thanks again, man. Awesome.